Welcome to episode 21 of the Perspective Shift podcast. In this episode, we want to visit the topic of fears again. We have talked about fear of the unknown and fear in general in a previous episode, and in this one, we want to talk about the subjectivity of fears. We want to answer the question, do we all face the same fears as human beings, or are these fears more subjective depending on our own personal experiences? We also want to deconstruct how these fears arise and why do we feel a certain fear in our lives. We hope that you enjoyed this episode, and let's get right into it. So I want to start by asking you, do you think fears are subjective or are they an objective experience amongst all of us?
The question kind of gets me to think. So if we're talking about fear in and out of itself, fear is kind of objective in the sense that we all have our own fear. But of course, fear from another point of view is also subjective because every human being has got their own fears that are based on many factors. But I think that there is a part of fear that is a little bit more, how would you describe this the best way? Not just objective, but it's also like in all human beings, due to our survival instincts, due to our brain wiring, and due to the fact that we're a human race and we want to survive and probably even be the best species on this planet or whatever you want to call it. But that is like that's like the bigger picture. Let's put it like this, okay? And if you're gonna go into the more detailed, smaller pictures, we're gonna go into the subjective fears.
Okay, before you continue, so we're basically talking here about rational fear and irrational fears. Maybe that's the difference between them. Like if we think about them, since we are thinking
I don't know
about
how to describe them or how to put them into. I don't even know if there's like specific terms for them or anything.
I'm not so sure myself, but I feel like if we're talking about fears about survival and
Exactly.
that they're more rational, But we have
Are
the
they
other,
though? Are they though?
they
Are they
kinda
though?
are, but because
They are only rational from our own perspective.
Mhm.
You know what I
Sure,
mean?
sure.
They could be irrational from an objective point of view.
Yeah. But I feel like in my brain is just telling me that the irrational fear are the more subjective. The things that when you really think about them, there is nothing to be afraid of.
Yeah, that can also be discussed in
Yeah.
a different point of view.
So even that can be subjective, I guess.
Even exactly. But like that's why I said like I think I'm not really sure. I don't know if I would even describe it this way.
Yeah.
Like in all honesty, I'm even missing the terminology here to describe it in a good way. But I believe that on the one hand, you've got a kind of general fear or like fear. The term fear, we all have fear.
We're all human beings, and it's part of being human. So.
Exactly. And you've got the fear that's related to survival instinct. And then once you start looking at fear into a little bit more narrower perspective, and you start to define what fear exactly is, I feel like that's when you go into a little bit more subjective thing. But like, it's hard to explain. It's hard to explain, but you can look at it like this. All right, like this is what's going in my brain. You have the word fear,
Sure.
and the word fear, each letter of it, is being written by multiple different kind of fears. And then the word fear in and out of itself is like not a concept, but it's something that we share as human beings. So when you start getting into details, you can find different kind of fears that you can categorize and then connect them to subjective experience, subjective lifestyle, subjective upbringings, and so on and so on.
I would say the core emotion itself, we all share the same sensation.
Exactly.
But why you feel it, why did it arise, all of these things, these are the subjective.
That's what differs. That's where fear starts standing
I
out.
feel like we can also connect, I don't know, maybe it's just a tendency of mine that I can connect it to modernity as well. I feel like people in the past didn't have as many fears as we do nowadays. Like I feel like as a modern society, we have a bigger range of different things that we're afraid of.
Sure, but also keep in mind it's easier to know about other people's fears nowadays than it was in the past. Since you have a big communication,
that
it's
contributes.
exactly like right now you have the possibility of knowing what someone who lives on the other side of the planet is afraid of.
Yeah.
Back in the days, that was almost near to impossible, I would say.
Yeah.
Exactly. So, due to the fact that our knowledge is expanding and higher than it was before, that also increases the numbers automatically with it. Is it related to modern society? It definitely is, because we are aware of other fears and aware of other specific terminology, other specific aspects of fear. We can start bonding or connecting or maybe clinging on to these fears or these words and start identifying ourselves with them. So that also means that we also have more fears than people used in the past, probably.
Yeah.
Probably.
Yeah.
I cannot assure that. I don't have the data for it. That I have anything for it, to be honest. Just on top of my head. But yeah, fear in a more specific or maybe in a more defined matter is definitely subjective. If you're going to go into the reasons of that or the factors that contribute to why we all have different fears, it's many of them. It's starts with your perspective, how you perceive something, how you don't perceive something. It starts with upbringing, how you were taught, what you were taught about. It's has something to do with your experience, what you went through, what you didn't go through. It has something to do with your value, with your brain wiring. Honestly, there's like too many factors that it's hard.
I feel like even if two people experience the same fear-inducing accident, both are going to react a different way based on their own personality.
Definitely.
So it's hard. I think it's hard to pinpoint how and when exactly a fear started, but I'm not so sure. When we are like very young, do we have fears like adults do, or are they? I'm sure that we all face fears even when we are extremely young. But are they the same kind of fears, or is it a different process happening here? Because when you grow up, you have more cognitive functions and you're more, I guess, self-aware and you're thinking about your thoughts. So but kids, they don't have that process. They're only being in the moment, but they are still afraid of certain things. So what's the difference here?
I think we do.
Yeah.
Again, I don't have the data or any specific knowledge of this, but from my own perspective is fear is something that runs in the subconscious, in the background of your brain. The difference between when you're a child and when you're an adult is that when you're an adult, you realize that you're afraid of something.
You think
but what's happening in the background, the subconscious, in the program that you've got inside of you, is still kind of the same. Because look at it like this. When as a child, all right, when you touch, I'm gonna take the most classic simple example that everyone talks about here. But when you touch a stove or when you touch fire and you burn yourself, it gets kind of written in your program that don't go near it.
You only need to do it one time.
Exactly. And of course, I'm just going to go a little bit off topic here. And I'm going to mention that the same point when you could burn your hand with the fire and learn not to do that again, that same reaction can be applied not only to physical pain, but also to emotional, mental, and spiritual, if you want, as well. Regardless, you learn that when you touch the fire, you're going to get burned, and the reaction is going to be to step away or not to go near the fire again. And that gets written in the program. So when you're an adult, something happens, you get afraid of it, you are aware that you're afraid of it, and then the reaction comes, whether it's a reaction that you have decided based on your awareness, or whether it's a reaction that happened in the subconscious, that gets written in the program. So in the sense of like we're going to take dating as an example right now. Say you dated somebody, you trusted them with a lot of stuff. They broke that trust. They broke your heart and ended up ending that relationship. That was in your brain when you are aware of it. You're like, okay, they broke my trust. They broke this and this. They hurt me. I'm going to end the relationship. That ending the relationship, the decision, that can be written in your subconscious as into every next relationship I'm going to get into.
You'll do the same.
If they break my trust, if they do this and this to me, based on the program that I've written for myself, it's going to be end this relationship.
That's how the pattern formulates, I guess.
Exactly. How does it work exactly? The brain have got no clue.
It actually makes me think that fear drives us to do so many things in life.
It does.
Some things could be to our advantage, like Like I am pretty sure that fear can be positive in our lives to a certain degree. Like there are things when you are afraid of, you become more careful and less reckless, where you could do or take certain decisions that are very risky and could end your life in that moment.
I
You
don't
know what I
believe in
mean?
that.
I do believe in that, in the sense like if
I
you're, let's say you are at the top of a mountain and you want to jump to, I don't know, to a very, let's say you're at the
okay.
top.
So now I'm gonna interrupt you there. That's there's there's a difference in my the way I look at it. There's a difference between fear and doing something suicidal. Okay,
Not necessarily suicidal.
if you're on the top of the mind, if you're on top of a mountain and you want to jump down to, I don't know, you want to jump from this cliff to this cliff, and the chances are you're probably gonna end up
Yeah.
there. That's suicidal. You know what I mean? There's a
But,
risk in
but
it.
you weren't afraid in that moment. That's why.
That's still suicidal.
Sure.
Okay, not suicidal in the sense of suicidal, but that's still taking a risk that's not being accounted for. So, for example,
absolutely.
if you want to take this jump and do this, then sure, but at least have some sort of plan that if you fail, you're not going to go down and die.
But
fears are in like when they're holding you back from the jump. That's the fear.
I don't agree with that, because I think fears are there anyway. They're just primitive emotions. You know, it's a primitive emotion. You're gonna feel anyway. But as you said, how you're reacting to it. So someone who is confident that he's gonna make the jump, let's say he's not suicidal. It's something that you can do. He has all the tools. You're just another example. You're just climbing a mountain in general. I'm pretty sure even the expert climbers, they still have the fear, but they roll with it anyway. You know what I mean? It doesn't stops them, but the fear is there.
I don't think so. I look at it based on my own experience. Okay, keep in mind here that the fears that I'm gonna mention or take as examples here are not fear that are life threatening or that can be related to death in life. They're just fears. But the more that when you have that fear, the more you try to react in a different way and change it, the more, of course, that you expose yourself to that exposure therapy, the less that the fear has anything to do with you. You start to get to the point where a similar situation happens, and instead of being afraid like you used to, the new norm for you becomes that I'm not afraid of this. I've got the data to back up what I've done here.
I agree with that, but
take Syria as an example. All right, when the war started off there, everything that was happening was causing fear to people, you know. And at some point in the future, a few years down the road, maybe even more than a few years, when everything that was happening became the norm, even to me, and now I'm taking a life death kind of fear. When that became the norm to me, even though it was still happening, I was just not afraid of it anymore because that was the norm. Exactly, you adapt to it.
I don't think I agree with you.
Fear isn't this. So maybe the fear will hide in the background.
This is what I'm trying to say.
Exactly,
like,
it could, but it wouldn't affect your decision making.
That's what I'm trying. That's exactly. You just said it in a different way. Like, I agree with you. The only thing I'm arguing here is that the fear doesn't disappear. Like, I'm not saying that everyone has the same fear. Let's talk about social anxiety. Some people don't have social anxiety at all. So for them, when they go talk other people, it's not like they're conquering their fears or facing them. They don't have that fear in the first place. But once you have this kind of fear of other people, I don't think it goes away completely. Even if you are became the most confident person, the fear is still in the background. You just don't listen to it. It's just babbling left and right, but you're not even putting it in your awareness anymore because you became so confident. You exposed yourself.
If it's not on your awareness, then it doesn't.
But it is still there. That's what I'm talking about. Like
I don't know.
When you go back to your basic,
that's where we differ. That's where we differ, probably. Like when it comes to many fears that are not related to survival as a human being, I feel like they disappear at some point.
So we're talking about the irrational fears here, I guess.
Exactly. Yeah. So even the survival fears, I would like to believe, an emphasis on that, I would like to believe, and I even believe, to be honest, that even those fears, you can get rid of them. In the sense of, maybe you don't get rid of the first reaction of the fear, but the fear becomes just like everything else. It just
Sure.
passes through you in
I
the sense
think
of like I could insult right now and you wouldn't get affected by it. It would just like, like goes in, goes out. And I feel like it can be the same to fears, where it's not a fear that you're whole because fears. Okay, this is getting a little bit too abstract here.
I mean,
Fear, when we're talking about fear, I feel like it's mostly based on a past experience that is related to an emotional that got you to release a certain emotion, and you started clinging onto that reaction that happened to this
sure,
event.
sure. I think that the reaction causes you the suffering more than the fear itself.
Exactly. So if you get rid of this and there's nothing that you're clinging on to, and you are in a similar situation and the fear arises, but you don't entertain the fear,
Exactly.
you just keep on going, then it's not a fear anymore because you already got rid of what has been programmed inside of you, or what you've programmed for
Sure.
yourself as a fear, and then it's just a thought that's passing that you're telling
It's
you
an energy.
that
It's
you're
energy.
afraid of this.
It's energy.
Whether it's an energy or a thought,
If you want
it's
to
just not
deconstruct it,
fear
if
anymore.
you want to deconstruct it even further, at the end of the day, it's a word that we created in the first place.
Exactly.
But I am talking generally here that you can get rid of the reaction. Absolutely, 100%.
Definitely.
I'm pretty sure that the fear itself, that ball of energy, is there anyway. And what you can control is your reaction, which you can change the program. You can practice how to behave differently to face this fear.
That's the difference. You're still mentioning it in the sense, like, this is still the difference between us, that you're still mentioning it in the sense that the fear is still there, you just change the reaction.
Sure.
I describe it as you get rid completely of the fear.
I don't
and then another fear arises, and then you decide whether you want to entertain that fear or not.
Sure.
But the fear that is related to this event, for example, you just completely get rid of it. And I believe that this is possible.
I think what I differ is that I always go back to the biology. There are certain things that are happening that you are out of your control. So when I say you can control your reaction, I don't know, you can change the definition of the word, you can change how you react, but that energy is still there. You can't just completely get rid of fear unless, I don't know, some surgeons would work on your brain and remove certain parts that they know where that fear arises. That's the only thing where I think it's possible to completely get rid of fear, which doesn't really make sense, but just the way I see it, I guess. Like,
we're going back and forth here, but I think you're just looking at it from a completely different point of view, and I'm just coming to realize this.
I'm just looking at it at the biology level, I guess.
Nah, that's not what I mean. You're talking about fears in general.
Sure.
And I'm talking about the fears that you choose for yourself that you can completely get rid of.
But aren't these the reactions that you create? These are basically what create these.
Okay, but don't forget, you can change the reaction, but you can still hold on to the fear.
Sure.
There's a difference there.
Yeah.
Because you can still hold on to the fear of fire, but you can change the reaction after you burn yourself.
Yeah.
But the fear of fire, if there was a fear of fire, is still there until you decide to let go of that fear. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
The reaction is
like
something.
It's like the first layer.
Exactly. And then when you peel it off a little bit deeper, you're going to get to the fear that you can also get rid of. But there is always other fears that will arise. That's in our human nature.
I guess this is where I'm going with this.
Exactly.
There are layers. You have talked about the first and second layer, and what I was trying to discuss,
you were taking fear as
trying to deconstruct it even further. As a reaction, not reaction. It's as a core thing of being human, like love. Like
exactly.
Exactly.
You're just talking about fear as an emotion in and out of itself.
Like, you can't get rid of emotions. You can't just get rid of them, but you can change how you react certain. To talk about dealing. Okay, so we've been trying to deconstruct these fears for like 50 minutes now, and
probably a bit longer, but yeah.
I think this has to go to this direction of talking about how do we deal with these reactions that we have to our fears, I guess. Like, how do we, when we are stuck, we know that fears are subjective. We know that, I don't know, our fear of driving or our fear of heights has happened because of so many things in our childhood, and that you
Not necessarily child. I'm
Not
gonna try to
necessarily,
do it.
not
Yeah, exactly. Because
necessarily. Like
you can
at some
even
point,
you can even get fears when you're an adult.
yeah, but anyway, all of that doesn't really matter as much as learning and understanding these fears and changing how we look at them, I guess. But how do we start with that?
That's a tough one. Um, I believe that you have to start by kind of identifying what the fear at the root of your being is. So when we're talking about fear of other people,
Mhm.
are you really afraid of other people, or are you afraid of the way they're gonna react to you? And if you are afraid how they're gonna react to you, to who you are,
Yeah.
then are you really afraid of their reaction? Or are you afraid of them not liking you for who you are? Or are you afraid of them liking you for who you are when you don't like yourself, which then would create a huge conflict with inside of
You
you?
see, this is a good example that even the first thing you have to do can be a little bit complicated because you need to understand: are you afraid of this or actually of this? You know, you might think that you're afraid of something, but when you think about it further, you realize that the fear is something else.
Definitely, but
So
based on my own experience at least, when you start getting closer to the root, something inside of you kind of lights up.
like, oh, I figured it out. Like
Not this, but the closer that you get to that fear, to the root of it, to the real fear, like, okay, this is the fear that I have. Is it related to this or to this? The more right choices you make, the more afraid you are,
Sure.
the more you feel the fear, the more intense you feel it. And at the same time, it depends on your purpose, of course. If your purpose is to face your fears, then a part of you deep down is going to be excited. Like, yeah, like
I get it.
we're getting to it. You know what I mean? But the more you choose the other options, the more you kind of like, oh yeah, okay, it could be this. But there is nothing behind that. It could be this. But when you're going the other direction, it depends, of course, because everyone got their own physical conditions. That's what I'm gonna call it, which is you react to certain emotions in certain ways.
Sure.
You know, uh, you react to certain emotions in certain ways physically. So, like either I don't know, tightness in the chest,
Yeah, that can be different.
temperature rising, and this and this. If you know how you react to emotions, and you know how you kind of react a little tiny bit to fear and excitement, you will feel these the closer you get to the root of the fear. And then that's how you start by identifying it. And then along the way, I feel like every layer that you cross
Leads you to the next.
before you go to the next one, there is something that has to be done in between. Like when you're cutting an onion, you don't just, remove 10 layers, but you have to do some cutting and some prepping and one layer at a time and this and this. So you kind of have to do work in between. You remove the first layer, you realize, okay, this or this, okay, this seems more in touch of my being, and you start to, I don't know, expose yourself to it, try to understand it, try to admit that you have this fear or whatever it is, you
Need
know?
to slow down. I would say that's something you can apply to so many different things, that you need to slow a little bit once you have reached a certain point of understanding, I guess. You can apply that to healing, you can apply that to things you're working on, to skills, whatever it is, that you work on it a little bit and then you slow down, you look back, see where you are, and then see how you're supposed to go on further. And yeah, absolutely the first layer is just understanding your fears in the first place. Am I actually afraid of this? Am I afraid of people? Am I afraid of their reaction? Because I don't know, our minds can really deceive us sometimes, and an opinion of a friend or someone we know can also bring us a lot.
Oh, definitely, definitely.
And
That's why I like to always say that there's nothing wrong with talking
it requires a vulnerability.
about who you are deep down.
It's not easy. Like,
Definitely,
it's not easy to talk about fears. Like, even personally, it took me a long time to be more open and just more easygoing when I'm talking about these kind of things, like the fear of death, like my family dying. I used to be really afraid of talking about. I have thoughts of my parents dying. I'm really afraid of that. But now I can just really openly talk about that without any shame, I guess, or guilt. It's like you need to
Kind of
be
recognize
a little
it.
bit recognize and be a little bit vulnerable. And I also think what and I also think something that is really important is to understand the subjectivity of fears as well. The things that we talk about, that when you realize that it is only in your head, that kind of fear, that specific fear, and that other people don't face it, it kind of puts you in this third person perspective where you can start to think about this fear from just a different point of view. What I want to add is that fear is a really big topic and you can approach it from different angle. And in this episode, when I approached you about talking about this idea, I just wanted to focus on subjectivity of fear and how different it is to every person and, fears in general. But I feel like it's a topic we have to go back to in the future and approach it from a different angle because I'm pretty sure there's just a lot more to say about this topic.
Um, yeah, definitely. I feel like fear, not just fear, I feel like a lot of topics when you start thinking about things, and thinking about things sounds sometimes also like a little bit on the surface level. But when I say thinking about things, I mean thinking about life and trying to philosophize how things are, maybe have a little bit of understanding. And then you start deconstruct things and you start realizing that everything has multiple different layers.
Oh, yeah.
Since look at it like this, everything is a spectrum, and it depends where you are in the spectrum, and it depends which spectrum you are on. Like everything got multiple different spectrums, and each spectrum got multiple different layers. And then
there's so much to know.
Like life is not just, or not. It's not like everything in life is just like, in my opinion at least, it's not just like 1D or 2Ds.
It's not fixed.
I look at it like it's like everything is like 3D,
Oh, yeah.
where you've got all the different, layerings, all the different states,
Not
or the
only
different
that,
this and this.
things always change as well.
Exactly. And then
honestly, like
everything needs to be looked at from multiple different perspectives, mainly because, and I believe like this is something that's important in today's society as well. Because once something goes a little bit viral, I feel like everyone sticks to that perspective and to that side of it, or that side of the equation, and then the rest of it gets forgotten, and that of course affects the people that are listening to it. Which that happened to me like multiple times, where I listened to a side of something that's related to life, a philosophical point of view, and then I got stuck to this only side of it, to this only part of the spectrum, to this only specific spectrum for about a year, and I completely forgot that there's other sides. And then when I suddenly heard about something else, I was like, how did I forget all of this? Like, what the heck? So like when we're talking about everything or anything, there's always multiple point of views, different aspects.
That's why you need to approach,
exactly.
That's why you need to approach topics from different perspectives. And I feel like there's so many things that we talk about that we can approach from a different angle and talk about just a certain thing that we didn't mention in the other episodes.
A lot of things are going to end up repeating themselves.
Exactly, especially topics like that when it comes to purpose, fears, all of these general topics.
Technically, you can always go down to the root of them, and then boom, problem solved. But then everything that's at the surface is not discovered yet. You can't just jump in the sea and expect yourself to suddenly be at the root of the sea, at the complete bottom. You have to go through the first layering, the first, the surface of the sea, the surface of the water, so you can get deeper into it.
And you realize how deep it is, and that you need to make more research and learn more about this specific thing to realize how rich the information there. Like you can go to a Wikipedia page and learn about something in 5 minutes, and you think you know everything about it, but you literally know nothing. It's just what seems to be that it's very easy to understand what this definition of the word or whatever it is means, but the more you delve in it, the more you go in the rabbit hole, the more things you discover and how endless it is.
At some point, realize that nothing makes sense. Not even life.
And still,
I'm just gonna throw it out there. Nothing makes sense in this world. Absolutely nothing, and not in a nihilistic way. It's just in a more of an interesting curious way, to be honest, that nothing makes sense, and we're still somehow making sense of everything. How the fuck does this work?
And we still want to know more.
Exactly.
We can't know everything, but we still want to know more. So
definitely, it doesn't make sense. Yeah. Let's end it here.
Let's end it here. That's a wrap for this episode.
Nothing makes sense. I think that's gonna be my favorite statement going forward from this point. But yeah, that's it for this episode. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time.
Yep. See ya.